everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Michael Chabon presents The Amazing Adventures of the Escapist, Volume 3. This is the third episode of our quadrology, looking at these wonderful anthologies. Well, some of them are more wonderful than others. These anthologies featuring the great superhero from The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay novel. We start off with a nice Tim Sale cover here. I like Tim Sale's art, just very sparse and very graphically pleasing. Same format as all the other ones we've looked at, same spine. This one, though, has an actual real ad, even though it looks like a mock-up of those 70s ads about, getting kids to sell seeds. Seems like a big scam when I look back at it now. But if you're a kid from, just grew up in the 70s, this ad was on like hundreds of comics, so many comics that you bought. It's quite remarkable how the graphic designer of this really gets everything right. It looks just like the ad, but it's actually a real ad, I think. Well, it's not really a real ad, but it is kind of an ad because it's showing off all the Hellboy products they have. Even though the order form, the coupon doesn't have, you can't buy anything. Kind of cute and very well done. Title page, it's a little Matt Wagner illustration. We'll see the large size full drawing of it later. I believe it was the cover of one of the normal size issues. We have the table of contents. And look at this, guys. Man, talk about a coup. So they got Will Eisner to contribute to this anthology. Not only that, they got him to contribute a spirit story, which he probably hasn't drawn a spirit story, I don't know, decades. And he probably never was going to, never planned to. But this editorial by Dana Schutz is kind of interesting and enlightening. She says basically it was a trade-off. Like, Will Eisner did not want to do this story. She asked him to. But then Dark Horse was publishing a book called A Spirited Life, all about Will Eisner. And the writer of that and Will Eisner really wanted Michael Chabon to do the introduction. Michael Chabon really wanted Will Eisner to write and draw an Escapist story, especially with the spirit. So they did a trade-off. And Diana Schutz said, oh yeah, he'll do that introduction, but you got to draw him a story. So he begrudgingly did it. And this is the last story that Will Eisner ever had published. He died the same year this came out, a few months before this came out. And I got to say, I don't know, how old was Will Eisner in 2005? 90? At least 80. And this is some nice stuff. A lot of artists, they get kind of lazy in their old age, or they just, they're not just lazy. They lose their facilities. And sometimes it's kind of like, oh man, it's a pale shadow of their former work. This is pretty damn nice. Look at this. I love how he incorporates the Escapist logo. Eisner has a penchant for that, of course. He's known for that. We also see the spirit here, the logo. So we see this little building, and Cavalier and Clay are chatting. I guess the first edition of their new book is coming back from the printers. And there's a courier, because it's so rare. I guess it's very valuable. Or at least it will be in a few years, because it's the first edition. So they didn't trust the mail. So they sent this courier. I guess the spirit's been tagging along, kind of looking out for this courier. Everything you want from a spirit story. The raininess, to water going into the gutter on the cobblestone streets. Really nice gray tones. And so the spirit and the courier get attacked by this gang of thugs. And they knock out the spirit. And they kill the courier. The spirit wakes up in a dungeon cell, tied up. Turns out the mastermind behind this whole thing is his old nemesis, Pigel. I never knew how to pronounce her name. I don't know if it's Pigel or Pigel. Even though I have all the spirit stuff, I never learned how to pronounce it. I'm going to say Pigel. Both of them sound pretty dumb to me. It's kind of interesting. Look how he draws Pigel here. She doesn't look like the sexy femme fatale. She almost looks like she's aged. And she's, I don't know. She's still very attractive, but she looks kind of like a middle-aged woman. And I guess because Will Eisner's older. So, of course, she always has this love-hate thing with the spirit. She gives him a kiss. And she basically says, where's that first edition? The courier died. And we can't find it. I guess somehow the spirit hid it. I don't know. The plot in this really doesn't matter. Will Eisner just kind of wanted to make a cute little fun comic. So she says, okay, I'll leave you to the torturers. Hopefully you'll give up the information about that. We see the spirit trying to break his bonds. And then all of a sudden, one of the bricks, giant concrete blocks that's in this dungeon wall, pop out. And his head pops out. I'm the escapist. And I guess he's also Pagel's prisoner. She's trying to get Chabon to pay a ransom for me. Spirit says, I'm embarrassed too. I can't get out of these ropes. So the escapist says, oh, I can talk you through it. I'll teach you an old Houdini trick. And it works. The spirit breaks through the wall. All of a sudden, he's like the Hulk. And the escapist can't get out of his bindings. It's some kind of electronic device that he can't figure out how it works. And Spirit thinks for a second, and then he says, there now. He pulls the plug out of the wall. So, of course, it's an electronic device. It can't work. I thought that was a pretty cute gag. And he asked the spirit not to tell anyone about this, since escaping is his specialty. He's a little embarrassed. And the spirit says, oh, if Will Eisner knew I was saved by a superhero, I'd never hear the end about it. And because Will Eisner, famously did not like superheroes. Didn't want to really draw them ever. And then they kind of have this little conversation as they run across the rooftops. Do you ever wonder what heroes do for society? And then they say goodbye to each other with some more of that really nice wash tones and gray tones. Pretty damn nice for what a 90-year-old guy. Next, we have The Death of the Escapist. And let me punch up my page here. This is written by Kevin McCarthy, that guy who's been writing most of the stories in these. It's drawn by Sean Martinbrough. And Sean Martinbrough usually is a graphic designer. You can kind of tell by his art. It's very slick. Almost looks like it was computer assisted. But he's done a bunch of comics in his day. I'm not really familiar with most of them. I think he's done a bunch of short stories here and there. But it looks pretty nice to me. It's pretty sharp. So, The Death of the Escapist, we start off the story in this authoritarian country called Quodesia, which the English named, when it was a colony, it means prison. Quode, I guess, is some English word for prison. And ironically, it's become this total fascist state led by the great leader, who's a complete petty tyrant and has absolute power. One of his flunkies comes, and the leader pulls out some Escapist comics. And he says, this must be stopped. I'm the only hero in this country. Also, he doesn't like the idea that it'll give people hope. So he crumbles it up and throws it at his lackey. And the lackey says, I'll dispose of this, sir. As he walks away, he goes to his place. Walks through the city, goes to his place. Turns out he has a whole collection of escapist stuff. In this country, that's like punishable by death. And he sits down and reads the comic that he was supposed to dispose of. Meanwhile, we see the escapist practicing one of his stunts. It's pretty nice art, pretty sharp. I love this panel right here. Almost looks like Steve Rude. And apparently, an agent of the U.S. government comes and says, you've been invited to Quodesia to do a trick, one of your stunts. And they all know it's a trap. And they know that the great leader is in league with the Iron Chain. But of course, Escapist is going to go. And hopefully free some people. So they get there, and they're treated very well at first, the great leader is very polite to them. And the escapists promised the president, the agent of the government, and to tell the president that he would take no direct action against the great leader because they don't want some international incident. So here's the great leader. He even hugs him, trying to butter him up. He meets that lackey guy. His name's Yao Gi. Let me double check. Yao Shi? Yes, it's Yao Shi. He's the guy with all the posters in his room. I like this running gag where Omar is always hanging outside the window. He's always like spying on all these people. And then because that lackey guy, Yao Shi, he's staying with them, keeping an eye on him. So Omar has to kind of sneak out if he wants to spy and get some reconnaissance done. So they're, constructing their giant escape stunt. It needs a stage and it needs all these, whatever, things they have to make. And basically the great leader tells Yao Shi, he says, yeah, your real job is to make sure that, his escape stunt doesn't work. Basically to kill him. And it turns out they found all of the escapist contraband in his bedroom. So he says, if you do this, maybe we'll forget about that. And Yao Shi says, I have no choice. Even though, of course, he doesn't want to. Hanging out with the, Tom Mayflower, the escapist, he really likes the guy. Not only is he, idolize him, but he actually was like, this guy's really cool. There's Omar again. He's hanging from a pipe. Just really nice, sharp colors, too. This is, it's very solid art, but, not my favorite, I wouldn't, buy a comic just because the guy drew it, but it definitely works for the story. So there's all these murder attempts on the escapist's life. And the more he hangs out with the escapist, the more Yao Shi feels ashamed for what he has to do. Excuse me. So it's the big night. The escapist is going to do his trick. He does all these amazing escape tricks, and the crowd goes wild. His final trick is this very elaborate one, and it looks like he dies. It looks like he's run through by this giant spike. They take him backstage. Yao Shi shows up. The escapist says, I want you to finish the trick. Here's a wig. Here's my costume. A duplicate of my costume. And Yao Shi goes out there. And, of course, the great leader's like, he's alive? What the hell? Sorry, I had to get some water. And he comes backstage to make sure the escapist is dead. He actually stabs him to make sure, even though he looks like he's bleeding out all over. So they allow Big Al and Omar and Plum Blossom to leave because they're pretty sure he's dead. And they all make it away safely, and they're on their plane, and they've got this giant duffel bag. It turns out the escapist was in it, so he wasn't really dead. But then I love this. At the end of the story, we realize Yao Shi has become the new escapist in Rhodesia, and he's going to continue the fight against oppression. Another one of these really fun articles by Roy Thomas, these fake histories of the comic companies that publish The Escapist. It's kind of strange, though. They reprint the first 4 pages that we just saw last issue. These are the exact same 4 pages. But then it continues, and it becomes more personal. Roy Thomas talks about how he once wrote for one of these companies. And lots of fun, dirty stuff in here. They got Marie Severin to draw this. This is great. This is supposedly a Not Brand Eck parody from number 2 that was never published. For some reason, Martin Goodman didn't want to promote this other comic company, and Roy Thomas wrote it. Here we have a Dick Ayers drawing, which I think Dick Ayers drew this just for this, I'm pretty sure. And this is another company that published The Escapist. And here's a beautiful Gene Colan drawing from another edition of The Escapist. And these articles are so, like, they're written by, comic historians and nerds. So they really get everything right. Like, they weave in the fantasy history with real history very, very deftly. There was even a small company that did The Black Power of the Escapist, which had the Escapist be a black man. And I guess in the late 60s. And this is drawn by Howard Simpson. And pretty interesting. I'm such a sucker for this kind of stuff. I could read, if this whole book was articles like this, I would totally love it. Next, we have another Howard Chaykin comic, The Liberators. This is a really nice splash page. I really like this. So I guess The Escapist is in Nazi-occupied Paris, 1944. It's the last days of the Germans. Everyone knows it. They're, any day now, they're probably going to fall to the resistance and be kicked out. The Escapist meets this woman he seems to know. I guess he knew her during the Spanish Civil War. They both fought. Her name is Mignonette. I never heard that name. Mignonette. And they embrace. And he says, whatever happened to that bastard who betrayed our battalion, or your battalion? She says, Pascal Portier, I married him. So very, kind of shades of Casablanca. And so we see Pascal here. And Pascal is just this total dandy. And strangely enough, it's like the Escapist doesn't, whatever, punch him in the face. He betrayed their battalion. It's just kind of like, that was the past, whatever. So now he's collaborating with the Nazis. The Escapist is giving him shit about that instead of, busting his jaw or killing him as a traitor. And he says, listen, we're kind of on the same side. Me and Meg yet heard of this plot where the Nazis, because they know they're about to fall, they're going to take all these great French, the degenerate art paintings. It's called the degenerate paintings because that's what Hitler called them in that famous museum show, where all the artists who were like modern art, and some of them just because they were Jewish, he didn't like them. So, but he also knows they're worth a lot. And so they're going to take them back to Germany. Pascal and Mignonette want to stop them. So even though he's a Weasley fuck, he, Escapist agrees to do it for Mignonette's set. Because, everyone in France would like this. So he says, I'm going to need help. So he needs a distraction to break into this place. And this is interesting. He actually has Edith Piaf. Basically, he figures they've got all these musicians to sing outside the building, and everyone would just kind of be like, oh, look at all this music going on. Maurice Chevalier is here, and Django Reinhardt. So I guess he knows them all and recruited them. And so he can sneak in. It's a distraction. This is some nice Chaykin art. I'm pretty sure he does everything in this except the colors and lettering. I think the lettering is Ken Brzezinak, of course, his longtime collaborator. Let me double check. Yeah, colors by Michelle Madsen, letters by Ken Brzezinak. Even the guys who help him carry the paintings away, it's the cast of Les Enfants du Paradis. Paradis, the famous French film that was filmed around this time. And so I guess they just got off set. So they're all dressed up in their costumes, and they all help the escapist haul these paintings out. So I guess they get him on a train. They're going to ship him somewhere. And then Pascal pulls a gun on the escapist. And he basically says, makes it seem like him and Mignonette are, allied. And turns out that, he doesn't care about France keeping the paintings. He's going to take them for himself and sell them. And all of a sudden we hear a gunshot. Mignonette has shot her husband Pascal in the back. She says, "You were always a complete and utter swine." Then she conks him on the head. And she says, "Yeah, Pascal wanted the art for himself. You wanted the art for the world. And I want the art for revolution." When the escapist wakes up, he's chained up. And she's on this train, ditching him. And then we see in the caption that she writes him a letter. She says, if you're reading this letter, you've made it back home to Empire City. And she explains herself, how she's a total communist now. And this will be a great blow for the workers' revolution. Of course, she knows the escapist can free himself, which he does quite quickly. But it's too late. She's gone. And guys, I'm so sorry. This train seems to be crashing into this building. I have no recollection of why that's happening. I can't remember why. So now we see the escapist is pulling back into the harbor at, Empire City. And he's talking to Omar. And the escapist says that whatever romantic naivete he's had has been thoroughly beaten out of him. That's the only lesson he's learned. It's a pretty nice face there from Chaikin. Here's another one of those escape knot comics. Look Into the Abyss by Paul Hornschweimer. God damn it. This guy's got to change his name. It's ridiculous. Paul Hornschweimer. And once again, a goofy little gag. Not really a fan of these. I do like his Forlorn Funnies. I have some of those. I really like that comic, but these escape knots are just, I don't know, it's a little too high concept, I think. Oh, this is nice. The Escapist, An Affair to Remember by Eddie Campbell. I'm sorry, just art by Eddie Campbell. It's written by a fellow Aussie, and his name is Daniel Best. Give me a second, guys. I gotta get my computer back on. I gotta stop flipping back to the contents page all the time. I know it's annoying. And look at this. It's fully painted Eddie Campbell art. Very, very odd and rare. And we see him at the World's Fair. He's doing a trick with a certain brand of car. I guess he's got some kind of arrangement with them. And he escapes from the trunk of this car after it's dropped in water. Once again, he's successful. The crowd's blown away. It's so weird seeing this old school Eddie Campbell in color. I mean, he's always in color now because he has that computer, that goddamn computer that's ruined him. And we see that there's an Iron Chain agent in the audience. He approaches the escapist in his dressing room. And he says, "We would like you to do, God, I was trying to do a German accent and it came out like, I don't know, Cuban. He said, "We would like you to do the same kind of display with our motor car." And they don't call it the Volkswagen, they call it the People's Wagon. So Escapist knows he's an agent of the Iron Chain, you can tell. But he goes along with it. Here's the People Wagon. When he opens up the hood, gas comes out. It was all a trick. They wake up, they're all tied together. And it turns out that the escapist isn't there, though. they trapped him in the time capsule that's going to be opened in 2644. They're having the big ceremony. This announcer guy is saying how we put in all 20th century culture items, copies of Life magazine, the works of Thomas Mann, a Cupid doll, a Zippo lighter, all these various things. I guess that was a big thing. I don't think they do that stuff anymore. So now we see the Escapist is in this capsule, and this is funny. He uses all of the things that the guy just described. He almost kind of like MacGyver, He to get himself out of this predicament. But then it's interesting. For one panel, he says, but first I need to clear my mind. Thomas Mann should do the trick. And he stops to read some Thomas Mann, as if that's a crucial step in him freeing himself. So he does all this clever stuff, makes a little makeshift bomb with Zippo lighter fluid and a Cupid doll head, and he actually breaks off the lid of this time capsule so he can free himself. Meanwhile, the evil German guy is going to drop the Escapist buddies from the parachute drop. Those rides back in I guess Coney Island still has one, where you drop down and a parachute opens, but there's no parachute on this, so they're just going to drop them to their death. This is some really nice stuff, nice looking stuff. The Escapist shows up, saves his buddies. He tells them that he already called the cops, and they round up all the German iron chain guys. And he says, I left behind something in the time capsule. My personal message to the people of the future. I really like this coda ending here. Empire City, 6940. That's what I meant. The Department of Ancient History. And we see this woman opening up the time capsule, and she pulls out a golden key, and she says, a personal grooming device, perhaps? That's cute. I like how Eddie Campbell dislikes, fantasy and sci-fi so much. He doesn't even try to make some interesting architecture. This is looks like something an 8-year-old would draw. Draw a building from the future. This is nice too. Paul Grist. I really like Paul Grist's cartooning. This is Doc Hypnosis and the Escapist. The physician of illusion versus the master of illusion. So it's almost like he's an omniscient narrator. He's at this Escapist show, and he's just going, telling everyone, or telling us, the reader, how the only skill that the Escapist has, is that he just tricks people into thinking he makes easy escapes look difficult. And he explains all these things. Yeah, he's got a lockpick in his cheek, and his foot clamps or foot restraints are made to fall off at a certain time. And, I'm basically saying it's all trickery. It's not like he's that great. He even kicks him off the stage here. I just love the way he lays out panels in his cartooning, Paul Grist. I'm pretty sure he writes and draws this. I'll double check though. Yes. He does everything in this. He colors it and letters it. So, and then he hypnotizes the crowd, and they all give him their money and jewels. He disappears. Everyone's impressed. Even the Escapist friends are like, wow, he's great. And of course, the Escapist is just like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. He seems like a bullshit artist. And even his friends are just all like, oh man, someone put his nose at a joint. They're basically thinking, oh wow, the Escapist is just being jealous. Omar hangs out behind, and he's rubbing his chin in contemplation. So the Escapist confronts the hypnotist. The hypnotist hypnotizes him. I'm sorry, is Dr. Hypnotist? Is that his name? I shouldn't really care about this. Dr. Hypnosis. And he basically paralyzes the Escapist. Big Al and Plum Blossom runs in the room, and he hypnotizes them. He turns Plum Blossom blind. She can't see, and he makes Big Al turn into a completely wipes his memory. As he's trying to run away with all the loot, Omar confronts him. And Doc Hypnosis can hypnotize him. In fact, we just see him stuttering. He says, this is kind of interesting. I like this little panel layout here. Anyway, he's just standing there. This is Doc Hypnosis narrating. And I whacked him with my bag of loot and made my escape. Of course, the papers were full of the story. Everyone came to see my show. The president asked me to perform for him. Soon my wealth and power was astronomical. I played before presidents and princesses. I'm known and feared throughout the land. He's like Uncle Scrooge in his money vat. And then we see what really happened. He's sitting there saying, I am the man who destroyed the Escapist. He's completely like in delusionary, just kneeling down, screaming out to the heavens. And of course, Omar hypnotized him. Omar says he tried to imprison people by taking away from them the things they need. But the hardest prison to escape is the one where we are given everything we want. Kind of nice ending there. And God, I love his cartooning so much. Oh, this is another fun one. So they actually got Catherine Ironwood, who was editor-in-chief of Eclipse Comics throughout the 80s, to write about when Eclipse got the rights to do an Escapist story. Of course, it never happened. And but this is really just fun stuff. And they bring in all of this obscure stuff. Like if you're a nerd who knows about Eclipse Comics, kind of like me, it's like, oh, wow, it all fits. It's like she really does this great narrative. How basically, I don't know if you guys remember, about a year and a half ago, we looked at Real War Stories, a 2-issue miniseries that Eclipse Comics put out. It was a benefit comic. It was all these kind of like anti-war stories, anti-military stories, and they got all these great artists and writers to contribute to it. And supposedly the story we're about to read, was going to be one of those. But then they got this license to The Escapist from the copyright holder, and they only had 1 week to do it. So somebody had a brainstorm and said, why don't we just take that Vietnam War story we had, get Thomas Sheets, the artist, to change it a little, change the art, and we'll turn it into an Escapist story. And that's apparently what happened. And of course, like all of these scenarios, it wasn't published for some random reason, So here we go. This is Another Man's Escape. This is written by a very well-regarded author, Chris Offutt, and it's drawn by Tom Yeats. Very well, very nicely. So we're in Vietnam during the war, and the Escapist has shown up in Vietnam. So double page spread there. The Escapist is, as he's traveling through the jungle trying to get to his camp, we see from his narration why he's in Vietnam. He felt guilty about having this deferment. He didn't have to go to Vietnam because all of his, great service fighting crime. But he always felt guilty about it. And so now he got himself stationed there. So he doesn't have his mask on, so for most of it, they didn't even have to redraw it. It was just about some soldier. But I guess they changed the writing, so it's about the Escapist. He vows I guess the Escapist has made a vow never to kill anyone. So he carries no gun, even though he's in Vietnam. He shows up at the base, and he meets Lieutenant Samuels, the guy in charge. It's like that kind of typical Vietnam camp you've seen in all the movies, where nobody gives a shit about everything. Everyone's smoking pot. They're passed out from drinking booze. They're just trying to survive day to day. The Escapist hands his orders, or whatever you call it, his papers to the lieutenant. He just rips them up. Says, I don't really care why you're here. And I need a man without a gun like a hole in the head. And you never know, it might happen today. So basically, he's there to free these prisoners of war. He needs someone to guide him to this Viet Cong prison. And, this guy's just like, screw you, I don't care. But he says there's one guy. He actually went into the bush all by himself, was ambushed, came out of the jungle with a machete and blood all over his body. So apparently this guy and now he's basically PTSD'd out. He's kind of bound to this tree. He's got his vest wrapped around the tree, so he just sits there all the time writing letters to people back home to America. He's lost his mind. His name's Corporal James. And the escapist tries to get through to him. And this guy's just, he's bonkers. But he needs his help. So apparently the Viet Cong, every night, they've got a bullhorn. And they, almost like Tokyo Rose in World War II, they just try to psychologically attack the American GIs by just yelling things into the bullhorn all night long, like, your wife is fucking another man back home. All your family hates you for being here. Nobody wants you here. Trying to ruin their morale. And James hates it. It really sets him off. Even before he lost his mind, it bothered him. Man, some of these Tom Yeats panels are really nice. Really nice drawing. It's interesting there. It just looks like Al Williamson doing Flash Gordon. So the escapist figures out, if I could stop that guy with the bullhorn, maybe I can get through to him. There's another really nice panel from all his years doing Tarzan. So he finds the guy, and of course he's got no weapon. Look at that. That's a really great action shot. He's evading the bullets of this Viet Cong soldier. He knocks him out, grabs the bullhorn, and he starts reading these letters that I guess, I don't know where he found them. But Corporal James, I bring you greetings from home. Jeff says hello. The girls still put their jeans on wet and let them dry. Your wife writes. And he walks into the camp yelling out all these things, and it seems to work. Corporal James frees himself from this tree, and the escapist continues to say things like, everybody misses you. It's a great year for the crops. And then by the time he gets there, he's done. He says, ready to move out, Corporal? And he's all geared up and ready to go. I guess that's all he needed to hear. So he leads him out into the jungle to find this VC camp. They find it, and the escapist says, okay, you'll have it, make a diversion. Take on these guys, and then I'll run in and free all the prisoners. So he takes on a whole, troop of these Viet Cong, and the escapist frees everyone. The escapist feels guilty about it, because he's like, he can't kill, but he's basically, using this guy to kill. Some nice battle action here. And they succeed, and they free all the prisoners. They make it back to the camp. The lieutenant's impressed. So impressed that he offers him a cup of coffee, which he never did before. I guess from that guy, that's a sign that he thinks you're okay in his book. So he says, Corporal James did my killing for me. I'd kept my oath to the key that I would never kill, but no one escapes war without blood on his hands. This is such a pleasant surprise, guys. They got European artist Jason to do one of his little silent strips. His Jason version of the Escapist. We see him doing this amazing feat of escapism, and he leaves and he goes home. When he gets to his front door, he realizes, oh shit, it's locked and I lost my keys. And he shakes it and rattles it, but he can't get in. So he's stuck out there all night. The joke being that he's the Escapist and he can't even break into his own house. I thought that was really a nice little gag. Oh, so now we have another faux comic, Weird Date. This is from 1949, supposedly. And so apparently, in the late 40s, Sam Clay, is that his name? Yeah, Sam Clay from Cavalier and Clay. He's the writer. He took over a comic book company. And that's when romance comics were big. So they put out a lot of romance comics. But he had a weird one called Weird Date, which is a weird blend of genres. Romance and crime, sometimes romance and horror. And almost implying that this reflected Clay's own ambiguous feelings about his marriage. This is very strange. I wish this was a real romance comic. But this is, I should tell you first, is written by Stephen Grant with pencils by Norm Breyfogle. It says here that comics historians attribute the art to Alex Toth. But strangely enough, they didn't even try to look like Alex Toth. I mean, obviously that's made up. Alex Toth is long dead at this point. Or at least, I'm sorry, he might not be dead, but he's not drawing. He wouldn't be drawing a comic for this. Well, actually, they got Will Eisner. Sorry, forget what I said. But this is a great little story, actually. I would love romance comics like this. So we see this woman. She's the narrator. She's a kind of a mousy secretary. She's always had problems getting dates. In fact, sounds like she's never had a date or a boyfriend. There's this guy shows interest in her. I guess he works around there. Some sort of government job, and all the women in the office are like, oh my god, we're gonna give you a makeover. They're all excited. Of course, she's like, kind of pisses her off, but she's just so desperate and so lonely. She's like, yeah, I let them do their work. I'm just so tired of seeing all these couples and I'm always alone. So the ugly duckling turns into a swan. She goes to the date, I guess it's at 8 o'clock or something, and he's way late. She can tell that everyone's looking at her in pity, where just half an hour ago, she was so surprised that all the men in the restaurant were looking at her with lust, which she's never had before. And she was kind of feeling really good about herself. She's like, wow. So it looks like the guy's not going to be there. The waitress soon feels so bad for her, she brings a bottle of wine over. And she doesn't normally drink, but she just is like, fuck it. And she drinks the whole bottle of wine. And she gets kind of sloshy. She doesn't really know how to drink. And right then the guy shows up. I guess he got the time wrong. And he says, oh my God, do you really think I could become interested in a slutty alcoholic? Because she's wearing this kind of revealing dress. He runs away. She's like, oh, no, this is not what's supposed to happen. And then she feels herself getting sick from the wine. She runs in the bathroom. This complete stranger, seems like a very nice woman, holds her hair back while she pukes and says, oh, let's get you home. When she gets out of the club, the restaurant, there's a guy waiting in a car. And we realize this guy's a pretty sleazy individual. So this woman drives the car, and our protagonist is in the back seat with this glad-handing dandy. And just after everything that happened, and the fact that she's drunk, and she's so desperate just to, whatever, have some romance, she actually kind of kisses him. And one thing leads to another, and she lets himself have sex with her. And I say that because she's not, it's very conflicted the way she's thinking, where it's like, oh, it's happening, I'm going to have sex, but it doesn't sound very pleasant. She says, I don't want to know what happened. I don't ever want to know. Because I guess she passes out for drunk. She knows she ruined everything, though. She knows that no man would ever want her now. Remember, this is 1947. So they stop in front of this place, a liquor store, and they say, hey, wait in the car. We're going inside. And she's just like, I just got to get home. She's a wreck. And she looks and she realizes the keys are in the car still. She's just going to take the car. So she crawls in the front seat. Right then, the woman and the man run out of the liquor store. A guy has a shotgun, I assume the proprietor, and he shoots the woman dead. The mean guy turns around, shoots the guy. He's got a bag full of money. They just robbed the store. So he says, drive. And the cops are hot in their heels. And she's driving, freaking out. The whole time, he just keeps screaming shit. And she's just like, make him shut up, make him shut up. She just hates him so much. And then a cop car pulls right in front. Look at these like crazy panels of by Norman Breyfogle. They would never have panelology, I think, like this in 1947. This is very like post-Neil Adams type stuff. But then again, there were always maverick artists doing strange stuff, so who knows? But it definitely does not look of its era. Like Norman Breyfogle wasn't even trying to draw retro. So the bad guy shoots all these cops. And she's had enough. The protagonist, she shoots the bad guy right in the chest. As he falls, though, she keeps firing. She's never shot a gun before. She kills a cop. And they gun her down. They don't kill her, but they wound her to disarm her. And the last page, we see her in the electric chair. So it starts off as a romance comic, totally turns into a Charles Biro crime does not pay comic, which is I love that idea. Great mix of genres. As she's in the chair, she says to herself, you know, she's ruined everything, so she's not even just like, yeah, I'm ready to die. But you know what? It sounds silly, but I want to see that guy Edward again. The guy I screwed up the date with. That's it. I would like to see him again. And she looks over at the electrocutioner, and it happens to be him, Edward. Remember, he had a government job, and that's the last thing she sees. I thought that was a good little tale. Next, we have The Siren Song of Circe O'Shaughnessy. And this is written by Howard Chaykin and drawn by David Hahn. And David Hahn hasn't done a lot of comics. I think he's another one of those guys who's like hot shit graphic designer and works for like corporations and stuff. Very slick, kind of retro art style. Kind of very appealing, I think. So the story begins in a department store. It's after hours. We see a hulking figure in the shadows. And all of a sudden, the lights go on. And it's, I guess, the security guys. And it's Big Al. And Big Al's just like, where am I? Who am I? And according to the other security guard, he says that makes 3 sleepwalking second-story artists this week. So apparently this has been happening. So they bail him out. And back at the Escapist headquarters, excuse me, guys. Oh, man, my throat's terrible. So the last thing Al remembers is that he was at a jazz club. He was bopping to the groovy new modern jazz sounds. This comic is such a Howard Chaykin comic where I think he wrote this comic just to like give shout outs to all his favorite jazz artists and just to his appreciation of jazz and that whole culture. So there's this woman, Circe O'Shaughnessy, and she's amazing. She's playing saxophone, and she's like a siren from ancient Greece, you know, and well, from mythology. And all of a sudden, Al just became transfixed. And he just had no control over his body. At the end of the show, well, he doesn't remember the end of the show. He woke up being caught by the security guards. So we see, this is kind of an interesting, weird little thing here. He's done telling a story, and then The Escapist starts listing off famous standards. The lady is a tramp, maybe. Plum Blossom whispers something unintelligible in his ear. How about Lady Be Good? Whisper, 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 whisper. So, we don't know what that is, but we will find out. So, of course, the Escapist is going to go. He's going to try to get the lowdown. Almost looks like Mitch O'Connell, just very sharp, stylized, retro art. So he goes to the club, and at first she's just like, I don't feel anything. She's really good, though. And then all of a sudden, it takes hold of him. And I guess she meets him backstage. I guess she's going to give him his orders. And she says that her father was a leprechaun from County Kildare, and her mama was a voodoo queen from the Bayou. She's a true Black Irish. So, he's hypnotized, so he just starts taking off his clothes and revealing his Escapist outfit. And she says, oh, wow, I lucked out. And she sends him off to rob this bank because she knows of his skills. Here's some more of this, just really simple stylized art. Almost looks like I could see Dan Clowes in here. I kind of like it. So basically, while he, as long as she plays the sax, she can totally control him. So she follows him to this place. She's playing the sax. She's going through all of the standards, doing wicked improvisations on all these great songs and ballads and tunes. And finally, she makes her mistake. And then we see the Escapist wakes up from his stupor. He says, sooner or later, they all get to I've got rhythm. And thanks to my post-hypnotic suggestion from Plum Blossom, I'm my old self again. So that was what she was whispering to him. And he grabs her saxophone. And he starts playing it. And because she says she's going to reveal a secret identity since she saw him without the mask, he says, no, you won't, because you won't even remember this ever happened. And he plays the saxophone and kind of brainwashes her. She turns herself into the police, of course, because he commanded her to. They just send her to the nut house. They're like, yeah, whatever, you're crazy. And so everything's wrapped up nicely. And when they get back, there's a cute little joke about how the Escapist says, now I think I'm into modern jazz. I kind of like that. And Big Al's all like, oh man, forget about modern jazz. Long live rock and roll. He's got a guitar. Kind of cute. Oh man, this is so weird because we have another one of these fake things, the Indie Escapist, where it really weaves real comics history in with this made up stuff. And it's this story that we're about to read is by Jeffrey Brown. If you've watched this channel for a while, I'm not a fan of Jeffrey Brown. In fact, I really loathe his work. I do not like anything about it. I'm amazed that he's so popular. I really hate it. But the fact that they got him to actually do an Escapist story as if it was one of his self-published fanzines, because he did a Wolverine fanzine that he only gave out to people so Marvel couldn't sue him. He never got a penny for it. It's actually pretty good. It's probably one of the best things Jeffrey Brown's ever drawn. It's just Wolverine running through a forest, and I can't remember anything else about it, but the art was very detailed. And just because, he grew up as a superhero kid. He loved reading the X-Men when he was a kid. And so supposedly, in this universe, he also did an Escapist one. But the lawyer for Sunshine Comics, the Escapist publisher, was much more tougher than Marvel's lawyers, and they gave us a cease and desist order. So supposedly this is some rare comic. Oh, I'm sorry. In this artifice, Diana Schutz actually paid him money and says, we'll publish it. And that's how you'll pay us back. And it's just like a bad Jeffrey Brown comic. Escapist is on a date with a woman. Of course it's not. It changes more because it becomes more genre-based. She gasses him. And it turns out she's working for this guy. I don't think they ever tell us his name, but he's a mad scientist type. And they're like, we're going to read his brain now. And because we've shot him up full of serum. And we'll learn all the secrets of the golden key. Okay, I'm going to try to compliment Jeffrey Brown here and there. I kind of like the way he does stuff like this. That looks pretty good. But just the way he draws faces and stuff. And his writing is really subpar. So when he looks at his brain, all he can see is the escapist is having these romantic fantasies about this girl. Because that's the last thing he was thinking about before she gassed him. You know, she was asking him if he has a girlfriend, and he was thinking, ooh, maybe this girl likes me. And I guess he won't stop thinking about this almost soap opera fantasy thing in his head. So he says, I might as well just kill the escapist. Now this girl is starting to have feelings for the escapist, or at least doesn't want him to die. She's like, hey, he's a pretty nice guy. So she convinces him to, give him more of the serum, which will paralyze him. And basically make it look like he screwed up one of his escape stunts, which will demoralize people. It'll be worse than just killing him. So they put him in a bathtub and tie him up with rope. Not a very difficult escape. As the water's rising, he finally wakes up. And the reason, because that girl, she didn't really fill him with serum. She wanted him to wake up so he wouldn't die. So, of course, he easily escapes the ropes. Okay, maybe I like that panel. A little. He breaks down the door, which was unlocked anyway. And him and the bad guy start fighting. I did like this line where he says, I'll defeat you with my bare hands, which happen to be holding this iron bar. And he swings the bar at the escapist's head. The escapist punches him out. The woman apologizes. She says, I really did care about you. So she says, I got to tie you up. The police are going to come get you. The bad guy says, I may not have learned your secrets of escaping, but I did learn one secret, the secret of your heart. And he jumps out the window and leaves them to their fate to be arrested. So like I said, I don't like the fact that there's a Jeffrey Brown comic in here, but the metafictional conceit of this book, I love it. I love the idea that they know their comics history, these editors, and it's really interesting if you're going to make this fake world. Now we have the final curtain, which is written by Jason Hall and drawn by the guy who drew the very first story in the first issue, that guy Eric Wright. Once again, a kind of graphic designer, animator type guy. Doesn't do many comics. I'm really starting to like his style. It has this very 40s, 50s newspaper comic strip slickness to it. And so this supposedly is the late 60s version of The Escapist, when comics were being relevant, like the famous Green Lantern comics. So this one was never published. The whole issue was pulped. And because the owner of the publishing company read it and said, I guess he was fighting cancer. So this whole comic is about euthanasia, and it was too controversial. But apparently a copy existed, thankfully, and now we can read the never before published The Final Curtain. The escapist is in jail visiting Big Al once again. They always ended up in jail. These guys, they're getting injured all the time. As he's walking down the hall, he hears someone just crying in pain. See, this is what I mean by that. Once again, he kind of looks like Mitch O'Connell, too. It's that very classic, very stylized, not stylized, just very sharp, very, crisp lines. It just looks like classic 40s, 50s art. There's this old man here. He's got terminal cancer. The escapist kind of takes interest in him. And when the nurse leaves, he grabs the escapist's hand and says, "Please, let me die." So this guy's basically just being pumped full of drugs, and they're keeping him alive, and he doesn't want to be alive. As the days go on, we see the escapist in all his various adventures. There's some pretty fun-looking stuff. The imprisonist has captured him, almost captures him, because he's distracted by thinking about this old guy. He can't stop thinking about him. And then, for some reason, we see this reprint of a lost 1940s escapist story. Jason Hall, in the introduction, in the written preface, he mentions this, that, like, hey, here's a fun fact. This was actually an unused page from the 40s of The Escapist. Drawn in a very interesting retro style. So the escapist keeps visiting this guy, this old guy. And he figures, well, maybe I'll just tell him about my adventures from the past. You know, that's why they showed that page. It was an excuse for them to rerun it, reprint it. And, but, you know, it is making him a little happier, have someone tell him cool stories, but he still wants to die. He doesn't want to be in this world. He tells him about an incident from his life when he was young. He was so in love with this woman. It looks like they're in Empire City back in the 30s. They were leaving a nightclub, and we see what are the League of the Golden Key and an iron chain guy in a car fighting. And I guess they lost control of the car. The car ran right into his love, right as he was about to ask her to marry him. So the guys basically said, I've never met anyone else my whole life. I feel like I've been dying a little every day from heartbreak. I feel like I got cancer because I was so heartbroken. And he says, you're the escapist. Can't you help me? Can't you set me free? That's what you do. So the escapist goes to visit the League of the Golden Key in their white linen suits, you know. These are like the Council of Elders, I guess. And he basically says, I know that I took an oath never to kill anyone ever. None of us can. But I'm also took an oath to free people. And this guy's imprisoned by life. He basically wants permission to kill the guy. To, mercy kill him. And they give him some nebulous answer. And finally, the escapist makes his decision, and he goes to the hospital. We don't really see what he does. He just hands him a golden key. I don't know if there's poison on it or something. But somehow, finally, the guy just dies. And he tells the nurse. And he leaves the hospital. And he just has, of course, his very sad thoughts. He says about the old man, he's made his final escape. The curtain has dropped. And I leave my seat in the audience, not knowing where his journey has taken him, but hoping wherever it may be that he's dancing. Just like he did with his fiancée before she was dead. Next, we have a nice cover gallery again. And here's that Matt Wagner cover that we saw, that little inset drawing. Very typical, very nice Matt Wagner painted work. Here's that Will Eisner cover from number 6. And then this is great. Bill Morrison of Simpsons Comics fame. I guess he started his career as a movie poster artist. So he does this fake movie poster for The Escapist and the Axis of Death 12-chapter serial. Looks like from the early 40s because this is Nazis and stuff. And, I forgot to look up. They have all these actors. I'm curious if they're the same actors we saw on the cover of number 2. All those Matt Kindt drawn portraits of people who supposedly were in the Escapist movies. I'm just that lazy where I'm not going to look it up, but I have a feeling it is. Very slick, very well done. Looks great. We have creator bios. And that's the end of Michael Chabon Presents The Amazing Adventures of the Escapist. It could be Michael Chabon. I probably say it either way. I don't know how to say his name still. But I do like his writing. I do like his creations. And I really appreciate that Dark Horse Comics did this. And I wish this would have gotten, I could have read 50 issues of this stuff. I'm really digging this. So next time will be the last chapter. Hope you guys aren't getting too bored. I just wanted to get these out of the way. One fell swoop. So 4 episodes in a row of The Escapist. But we'll be back to mix and matching stuff up pretty soon. And hope you liked it. And I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.